distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen.
We'd like to welcome everyone to the BK History Club. We meet here every other Wednesday in honor of Brother Hassan, Amos Wilson, Colette Colvin, late great Professor Bill Mackey, El-Haj Malik Al-Shabazz, Brother Gil Noble, Louis Ray Rivera, the real attorney at war, Alton Maddox, Minister Khaled, and all the historians. But first and foremost, for the people that came out, give yourself a great big hand for coming out and supporting the BK History Club. Professor George Simmons, Renaldo Rashidi, Brother Sekou, Brother Youssef, Tape Man, all of these individuals in honor of the United African Movement. Miss Leola Maddox and the UAM, and she had a relatively new and old car that she drove all the way from Teaneck. And I will never forget, I will keep the name open, I will keep mentioning Alton. When people want to forget him, and she believed in coming out so people could get together and people could meet and talk to the speaker, conversate, ask questions, meet the speaker, talk, have coffee, get his number so if you ever needed any other information. Do you know what it was like to have Dr. Ben's number? Do you know what it's like to have Trust Graham, Dr. Arthur Lewis? Rest in peace, I had Amos's number, Dr. Clark. Do you know what it's like to call Professor Mackey? That's what the live lectures is about. But in this day of technology, we're capable of having people that's unable to get to the location. They can log on from anywhere in the world. That's what technology has brought us to. But in the old days, you had to come out. You had to meet the people. Sitting with Dick Gregory at the UAM. And I had some people on the line had the nerve to talk about the Central Park 7. That they knew all this information. So I quietly asked them, were you a member of the United African Movement under Alton, Leola, and all the people? Well, you remember, did you come to the lectures every Wednesday, rain, sleep, to listen to Alton and the speakers? Did you go on the trips with the UAM? No, you didn't. So when you want to make statements about people you don't know, if you wasn't in the UAM and wasn't around with all those, if you never sat down at the feet of the master when he went in the courtroom, and all the young lawyers, white, would come down and word would be out that Alton, and they would sit there and listen to the master blaster. So you don't know what happened with Tawana Brawley. You don't know the statements made by Bloomberg and them. You don't know. Of course, you never went to those lectures. We beg people all the time. We beg people all the time to come to those lectures. And you know what they would say? I don't don't want to go to that nonsense. Today is August the 12th. 366 days of Black History Migration. August the 12th. Acclaimed soprano Lillian Evans, first African American to perform with an organized European opera company, was born in Washington, D.C. in 1934. She will give a command performance for President Franklin Roosevelt at the White House. Also today, Shirley Chisholm, congressman and activist, 1924 to 205. The best way to describe Shirley is by the title of her first book, Unbrought, Unbossed. Chisholm was her own woman. She view of society's problems was clear, and she initiated innovative solutions. She was born in New York to parents from Barbados and British Guyana, and was in Brooklyn. So that's what happened. So we're going to put the camera over to the Amos collection. And this is for the people. This is for the Amos collection. This is the Health African World Info System with Brother Sababu. And these books, Blueprint for Black Power, The Psychology of Self-Hatred and Self-Defeat toward a Reclamation of the African Mind. Black on Black Violence, The Psychodynamics of Black Self-Annihilation in Service of White Domination. Awakening the Natural Genius of Black Children. African-Centered Consciousness versus the New World Order. Louis Ray Rivera's Jazz in Jail, The Falsification of African Consciousness, and Jesus and the Disinheritance. I just picked that up. And for anybody who thinks that, we are still not controlled by white folks, then something is wrong with you. So, Sababu went beyond the call of duty, the psychology of self-hatred and self-defeat, because our minds have to be reclaimed. And Black on Black Violence, the psychodynamics of Black self-annihilation in service of white domination. These books will get our minds right, minds included. But when you look at Black on Black Violence, all this is orchestrated. And if you don't read this book, you can look at how in Haiti, the BGO family, the Brandykes, and all of them supply both gangs to keep chaos in Haiti. But they never show you the good parts of Haiti. They never show you where the rich people live at. And then the president and the people behind him made a statement for the Haitians and the Syrians to go back. But all I see is Haitians. I don't see no Syrians crying. I don't see them crying about it. And while the Democratic Party was in power, they never gave them their due. Temporary status, 12 years they was in there, and Biden was in there, and you never got it. So now where's the Syrians on this? Why are they not crying and making newscasts? Why are they not showing the good part? Anytime you see Haiti, you see, when something happens, you see Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, and Bush. Black on Black Violence, they fund both sides. In honor of Louis Ray Rivera, Jazz in Jail. Louis Ray Rivera went beyond the call of duty, coming down to Mackey's and speaking. And he left us too soon, and he would speak. Me, Calvin, Brother Saab, Brother Colvin, and he would speak, and he would talk for hours, and he would walk him back home to Jefferson Avenue, and he would speak for another hour and a half. So I never want to forget. That's why I say it every week. Okay, I'm going to name some books. I just found this book. This book was in the garbage. The Iceman Inheritance. Prehistoric Sources of Western Man's Racism, Sexism, and Aggression. Michael Bradley. In honor of Dr. Ben, Black Man of the Nile, Ethiopia, the mother of civilization. And he goes into everything that went on, the building of the pyramids, those great dynasties, the languages, the history that was taken from us, how the other sources came in and took control of the world's greatest continent. And Dr. Ben goes in how those pyramids was built, the different types of people. Excellent, Dr. Ben. So we never want to forget Doc and Dr. Clark and all those historians. Go another book in honor of Professor Mackey. In 1969, after 20 years living in New York, engineer, photographer, educator, William Henry Mackey returned to the rural Georgia backwoods. This is his book. And hoping that I could get it rebroadcast, get it reprinted. So that's a book on Professor Mackey. American, African, or American, Black Identity Crisis in New York, 1784 to 1861. So we're gonna have this book. The draft rise was 1863, I believe. The draft rise was 1863, where the Irish hung the blacks from lampposts in the Children's Museum. So this book tells us political activism in the early days. Thank you for the African Echoes family on this. And once again, another study. I heard another group of people just got some reparations, but they never have this book. Here go the hangings of the people. Here go the hangings of black folks. In Mississippi, here go the hangings. And not all of them was black. You had some whites they were stringing up too. This brother to a tree. The postcards. What we went through. This is in Statesboro, Georgia. The dogs. The door is open. The dogs. The lynchings. Will James in Cairo, Illinois. Here's another brother, strung up. The railroads, the postcards. Here go postcards sent to people. Here goes some being strung up. So when you have this, and you go to the reparations to try to get some compensation, nobody want to say nothing. They don't have the book. So that's what we're talking about. Go quietly or else, Spiro Agnew. So if you think for 1 second, his own story of the events leading to his own resignation, this is Spiro Agnew. And if you think Donald J. Trump is running something, you better think twice, because he's not. It's somebody always behind the scenes. Don't worry about that, Linda. I get that. The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. Chancellor goes beyond the call of duty. He talks about all the mistakes we made in the land of the black, those great armies. He talks about the Arab slave trade. A lot of people talk about the European slave trade. Chancellor talks about the Arab slave trade and how the doors was already open. So Chancellor Williams goes beyond the call of duty. And it is a comprehensive analysis of our past and most prospective and relevant analysis of our present condition as a people. Chancellor comes to us at a time when his message, his interpretation correctly can help us understand why we lose, why the black African man must firmly on the bottom of Africa and everywhere else in the African and his descendants reside. His book needs little analysis. It needs to be read. His message is sharp and clear for everyone to see. He says that the central problem of the 30 million black Africans in the United States is unity, that we must or we perish. That's the African World Review. So get that book by Chancellor Williams. In honor of Cynthia McKinney, she's a bad sister. How the U.S. creates S-hole countries. And when the coronavirus sneezes, if Cynthia McKinney was in office, Warnock and all them phony balonies wouldn't have to worry about it. Cynthia McKinney was the only one that cared about the people of Georgia. Tyreen Wright, the making of a Pan-Africanism. Queen Nzinga, African warrior queen, Nzinga of Angola. And if the sisters would read this book, the brothers wouldn't pull the wool over. She negotiated fierce with the Portuguese. She negotiated beyond. And when you get that, I found this book, The Portuguese in West Africa, 1450 to 1617. So you got to read this one to understand, but you got to read that one to see how the Portuguese was the first invaders that came in. When Africa was weak, after tearing up for all these years. Slavery by another name. The re-enslavement of black Americans from the Civil War to World War II. W.E.B. Du Bois, Black Reconstruction in America, 1860 to 1880. And this book has excellent, I even found an old article on the hepatitis C virus. I also had an old article here, and William T. Close, 84, who helped control the Ebola epidemic in the Congo. These are old newspapers. And this is, you zoom into this. I want my wife to zoom into this, and I want you to see this and see this very clearly. For those who don't have the pleasure of having a Dr. Lewis or a Dr. Haru, it says, pancreatic cancer linked to sugar intake. Sugar is the culprit of a lot of disease. And this is an old article. Pancreatic cancer and sugar. And it's funny how I had this. And let me keep it going real quick. Remember, the Portuguese in West Africa, 1415 to 1619. The Portuguese in West Africa brings together a collection of documents, the majority in English translation. And it talks about the black Portuguese community. This book, I found it in the street. I went to New Orleans and I got this book. Captive, Louisiana and the Making of Mass Incarceration. And also, portraits of the 1960 Mississippi Freedom Rise. And it shows you the pictures of the people that went down the Mississippi. All the people from Montgomery, all the people, Frank Holloway, Reverend Lawson. Excellent publication. And then we went into this, then me and my wife went down there and went in and got this book. Louisiana Making of Mass Incarceration. And it talks about Angola. And these are pictures. You better not do nothing wrong in Louisiana. And the guy had told us how you're running around talking about all these migrants and going to Delaney Hall, but you never go to the facilities. You never go to see about the people in the state facilities. They grow their own food in Angola, in Huntsville. So when you go to New Orleans, you go to the museum. Also, the history of the Irish. If you ever want to know about a people that's just something like us, black folk, you read about the Irish. Labor. Mexicans, Salvadorians, and all these folks coming in, they use them. These are children in labor, with labor. These are children. Huh? Who's shining these shoes? Who's making brooms? Who's shining these shoes? And you always talk about black folks shining shoes. Who got a hammer in his hand? Huh? Who's selling pecans, huh? Who's shooting dice in the park, in the backwoods, huh? In the alleys? Who's making bags? Who's sitting on the doorsteps? Huh? It didn't start with us. Who's carrying planks of wood? It didn't start with us. It didn't start with black people. It didn't start with black people. The international Jew, Henry Ford. And I remember they said in Detroit, Henry Ford said there'd never be any blacks in Dearborn. And who controls Dearborn right now? The worked octopus, the dark money cabal manipulation of the federal government. And I'm going to read something and I want you to understand. And that's why I always mention this guy. This is from Scott Walter, president of Capital Research. O'Neill has relentlessly borrowed into the scheme lynches by left-wing mega donors like George Soros. Hand goes wise with the help of unions and the left non-profit industrial complex. Together they collide with the deep state to reshape our lives. If you disagree with their agenda of forcing men into women's sports, shutting down school choice for parents, and blowing out border security, you need to see what O'Neill has uncovered in this netherwork. This book is Tyler O'Neill, and it talks about King George. Trump ain't got nothing on King George, but Trump knows it. Dirt, European during the Dark Ages. Jews and Negro slavery in the Old South, 1789 to 1865. An empire of their own, how the Jews invented Hollywood. And it talks about how they took control in making movies and doing all kinds of stuff. Birth of a Nation, which destroyed our image. And they was in the red, and the black exploitation movies brought them out of the red. They created scenes that never happened. They destroyed the image of blacks the way they still do now. And we pay for it, and they make millions. Zuckoff, Harry Warner, Carl Manbeer, and it goes even to the Brofmans and how their kids took over. Get that book and read it. Dope Incorporated. Everywhere you look, you got medical marijuana. And black folks ain't the only ones. You got whitey smoking weed, walking up and down Brooklyn. It smells disgusting. And you had the nerve to get some black folks sitting up there at the Harlem State Office building promoting cannabis. If anything, the Democratic Party done gave our youth is the free smoking weed, and King George is behind it. They're not even going to the liquor store, they're going to the weed spot. Everybody talking about the Epstein files. You couldn't go to the club. This young lady, Whitney Webb, says, blackmail, one nation under blackmail. So before you start going in to say what happened at the Epstein files, where you don't even have enough money to get into the club, you better read some books.
Amen.
Read some books. The manufacturing of a president, Barack Hussein Obama. The CIA insertions of Barack Hussein Obama into the White House, Wayne Mansfield, Dexter Hartley, Larry Sinclair, Obama and Larry Sinclair. And what people say, oh, anybody could write a book. It's in the book. Anybody can write a book. People don't know what they're talking about. Just read the book. The Michelle Obama's unofficial White House Guide and Rights and Privilege of the Transgender. And I just read for you. This is compiled by Richard Sanders with publicly accessible documents from the Obama administration. You want to read about somebody, the Trumps? Read about the Trumps. Don't tell me some stuff what he did. Tell me the books you read about Donald J. Trump. Frederick Trump, who came to America with a suitcase and a dream. Running from Europe, as Dr. Lewis says. Great-grandfather came to America, one suitcase. So if you can't tell me a book you read, The Art of the Deal, you can talk about how racist a person is, but everything come out of his mouth is, I thought I had a deal. The problem is, family, is that black folks ain't got no deal. How can somebody that come to America, got a big Bravo store on Fulton Street, ain't been in the country that long, got a big Bravo, how did he get the money? Because he had a deal. Invasion of the prostate snatchers. Ayo Kamati, Jews are the problem. Number one and number two. King Soros. Any book you see on Soros, you better get it. The man behind the curtain. Soros on Wall Street. How Soros and 60s radicals took control of the Democratic Party. Then you just heard what Tyler said about him. Walter Williams, The Historical Origin of Islam, Walter Williams. Just pick this book up. American Medical Killing Machine. Capitalism on a Ventilator. The Cancer Industry. Mark Sloan wrote a book about his wife. Neither safe nor effective. Dr. Scott Whitaker, the medicine causes a solution. Dr. Scott got an excellent book. The Pfizer papers. They forced Pfizer to come with this book for the public to read. Moderna, who just came out with a vaccine, a flu vaccine, Moderna, who never made a vaccine in their life, refused to get that book published. It was called the Moderna Files. I had it, and they stopped it. But Pfizer put theirs out. So before you ask some questions, and all you folks coming on, you better ask them to put that book out. The vaccine timeline. Donald Trump did a big move in my opinion. Because if you don't think when God brings a baby into this world, as Trust says, the chromosome, and you hit the bullseye, and you get human life that's coming into this world, as soon as they pull that baby out, the first thing they want to do is give the baby vaccines.
That's right, and I hate it.
The first thing they do, and all our kids, and you watch the baby grow up, and all of a sudden the baby's not right. Or you got shaken syndrome. You have people that lost their children. So this book talks about the vaccine timeline. So you want to know who's on? Everybody got something to say now. while our kids are running around. Rand Paul, deception. The great CO cover-up, and you can thank Rand Paul and the Republican committee for bringing Fauci. And how do you take the fifth all these times? Look what happened. And all you had to do was read this book. Even before we read this book, our great doctor told us about it. I lost my brother to the AIDS crisis. When you read this book, you'll see everything that went on. But they put him in front of the Senate hearings. And all you had to do was read this book. That's all you had to do was read that book. And once you read that book, you wouldn't have to ask no questions. You wouldn't have to wait till the Senate hearings. At least Rand Paul exposed them. Now, I don't know what's going to happen, but it got exposed. And the people start jumping on social media. And before they wouldn't say nothing. Causes unknown. Sudden death. Young stars. Young athletes. Dying. In the prime of their life. Not waking up. But see, we had this information way before. Now everybody coming out of the woodwork. This book is on Amazon. You talking about banning books. They ain't gonna never stop banning books. You walk down the street, people throw them away. Edward Down, a brilliant Wall Street career, joined financial titan BlackRock. Larry Fink, head of the World Economic Forum. BlackRock controls all of our lives. BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Y'all talking about Donald Trump, racist. You are controlled by powerful people. Anytime you put your money in that bank, you are controlled. So don't be running around. And he managed the fund for BlackRock, $12 billion. And he found himself withdrawing from Wall Street greediness. And started wanting to find out why. Because they wanted to know why they was spending out all this money. Thorough Black Talk, Tad, Keisha, Brother Blacksmith, the Freemans, Sister Brooke, Sister Mama, and they're talking about the reparations. So Thorough Black Talk comes on every Thursday at 8 o'clock. That's on Facebook. Blog Talk Radio, Sister Empress Chi, Brother Lumumba, Brother Moses, El Pollinator. That's an excellent, they got podcasts coming on all through the whole week out of Philly. But the Saturday night blockbuster program, Blog Talk Radio, and it's on YouTube. It's live. You just gotta watch what you say because you gotta be, you gotta say it correctly now. Ayo Kamati, Sankofa Revolutionary Radio. Brother Anthony Mohammed, WS5YP 95.1, Birmingham, Alabama. This blockbuster program is called Sankofa Revolutionary Radio. It come on 8 o'clock. Brother Jamal, excellent commentator, and you could call in after Brother Jamal from 8 to 9. Then you got Dr. Haru with his health results and his products. And he doesn't want you to buy anything. He wants you to read the eradication. And then you buy the products he sells. So Dr. Haru from 9 to 10. And then Ayo Kamati, who's in Africa right now, giving you the update on what's going on. So that's Sankofa Revolutionary Radio. That's Monday mornings. And they get all through the whole week. But the 8 o'clock show on Monday, but they give you a blockbuster on finances. Dr. Haru is actually coming together in a global, international, African-American, world-renowned, red pill, Anthony Mohammed. Dr. Haru has been all over the globe, and he's teaching investment. Because you can talk all you want, but if you ain't got no something stash, it means nothing. You got winners and you got losers. So Dr. Haru is on point on Wednesday Wealth. That's a good show if you want to start learning. See, we had Brother Hank came here and showed us stuff, but Dr. Haru and Sankofa Revolutionary Radio, big ups. Darren Muhammad, State of the City, Baltimore. He might come on tonight, Wednesday, Thursday, but the Saturday program is a blockbuster. So we want to thank Darren Muhammad, State of the City, Saturday, sometime Wednesday, Thursday, but he's the man. Dr. Aline, Your Immunity Project, that comes on Kalfani Radio, and it comes on Sankofa Revolutionary Radio. Every Friday, the African Echoes family, Brother Trust Graham, and they're doing the psychology of self-hatred and self-defeat toward the reclamation of the African mind. But the Know Thyself study group on a Saturday with Brother True and the gang. That's the 1-2 punch, Friday and Saturday. So they're getting it together. The Semotac organization, Minefield, with Dr. Mack, Richard Dean Theodore, so that comes on 10 o'clock on Tuesdays. Excellent program. So Dr. Mack is getting it together on the things he's doing. Those are just community events. And also we have the UNIA, and they store the rock. So they're trying their best. You have to go out there at least once a month if you got a car. You go out there, and it's right across from the Home Depot, 13205 Merrick Boulevard. If you're driving, you take the Conduit, make a left turn. If you're going to Long Island, take the Conduit, get off at Farmers Boulevard, take Farmers all the way to Merrick, make a right turn on Merrick, go 2 blocks, and they even got parking. You will not get disrespected. Nobody will follow you around the store. And you're spending your money with your own. So he's trying their best. The UNIA is trying their best for us to spend some money where you don't have to be talking about somebody disrespecting you and this and that. You buy your own food, you cook it your own self. So we want to thank the UNIA. Michael Duncan and Raymond Dugal, UNIA, and they're doing it one at a time. So ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for coming down and supporting the BK History Club. This is part 3 on Dr. Lewis, all of his lectures. You can go on YouTube under BK History Club, and all the lectures of the BK History Club you could watch, go over, analyze. But the main thing, you could come down to the Mackey's group and speak to the speaker. You could come and talk to him. You could get his number. And that's one thing about live lectures. So ladies and gentlemen, just be, and I got one more, I want to say this. I got one more event that I have to talk about. And this is our Detroit connection. Brother Boatwright out of Detroit. And this is our Detroit connection. Here we go. This is our Detroit connection, and this is very important because they are replacing us. If you think for 1 minute that the African American is not being replaced, how people in these big block stores don't even speak English and got jobs under sanctuary cities, how all these mayors are just knocking out African American candidates. This guy Soros and them are coming down strong. See, they don't need us no more. Every major black community in America is being taken over by other people. From East St. Louis, Detroit, Michigan, Harlem, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brownsville is next. So they're replacing us with new people, and then they're bringing in their own candidates. And with early voting, you're out. And you will see all the people that betrayed us, you will see. They already starting with Esplanade up in Harlem. He should have never been given Harlem. Rangel gave it to him. But Brother Boatwright, and this is going to be August the 16th on a Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, hosted by the Center of Pan-African Studies in Detroit, Michigan. Facebook Live. are African American established Democrats being replaced or overlooked by largely non-black progressive candidates. The speaker is going to be Dennis Boatwright. It's going to be live streamed on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Rumble. This is from the Center for Pan-African Studies, Sunday, August 16th. Topics to be discussed. Are black established politicians being extinct? Yes, they are. They don't need you no more, so you can sit up there and lie to us if you want, but the grassroots know. And if you drank the Kool-Aid, as Dr. Lewis said, they don't need you. Do black elected officials stay in office too long and don't do nothing? Yes. Where is the Congressional Black Caucus? Nowhere in sight. So this is an excellent program. August the 16th. The Center for Pan-African Studies. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring our keynote speaker. Part 3 of European immigration. The removal of the indigenous, where you don't even see the indigenous no more. And African Americans are leaving here. I'm going to so many, I went to a sad funeral the other day. And we're going to. So we're going to bring in Dr. Lewis and give him a great big hand. And remember, all the books you can get, it's for educational purposes. You get the books, you read them, you study them, you do what you want, but everything is for educational purposes, to give information. Give Dr. Lewis a great big hand for helping us out again.
Yeah, Dr. Lewis.
Here we go.
Nobody has a scissor.
We're going to find the point. Scissor?
Scissor. See, I want to put it right in, right here. Okay. Okay, that's good. Even if you don't have paper, this is good.
You understand?
Right here. See? So when they talk about the they really want to go right here. This turn it this way. Yeah, that's good. No. The thing is for them to see the area and how to identify particular. Mainly we want to discuss this here. So we ask, what is the Middle East? When you say the Middle East, the people have to understand
where
the
it's at.
geography.
Okay.
Sit or stand? Which one, brother? Sit or stand? Okay, that's.
No, you can sit down, it's gonna go down. Once you sit down, the camera's gonna follow.
Yeah, so let's do it here, and then I'll slowly come up. Okay, this is,
Yeah, so your camera follows. It moves.
okay, yeah, I see.
Let me find your point.
Ray, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Today's, what,
The 12th, I'm not sure.
today's the 12th.
Yeah.
It's the 12th.
Okay, good evening, African community globally. My name is Dr. Arthur Lewis, and I've been given the opportunity again, as others also, to speak to the African community about different issues that relates to African people globally. Tonight, which is August the 12th, I believe, 2026. It's in the evening, about 7:30 in New York City. And it's the Mackey's to the 3 lecture series. And again, the individuals who make Mackey's to the 3 lecture series, that's the audience plus Ray, his wife, and the whole logistics. Again, this is logistics. I have to say to everybody, I'm able to come to you because of the effort of the logistics department to make it possible. That's right, Ray, his wife, and the whole community, Mackey's to the 3, and all of the individuals who come by to hear us talk about issues that relate to African people. Tonight, I have a handout. And there are 4 sheets to the handout, which is obtained in the back. And because of the fact that we are speaking to the African community and they do not have the material in hand, that's one of the reasons why we read what we have in these papers. We explain what it is that we're talking about. We give examples, we give pictures, because we have to be able to convey the information that we are that I'm able to present to you in such a way that I'm able to hopefully transmit to you the information that's here, to help you interpret it and to see the relevance of it. And then if we get a question and answer period, that's an opportunity for those who are here to make their comments, to make corrections, to make objections. People who are watching by the video, the same. So as I indicate, the material that I present to you is present in the public. It's no special type of information. It's no secret information. It's no information that can damage or hurt anyone, any country. We're passing on information. And so in here, what you have is you should have 2 sheets. One sheet, we have 4. We have written material on 4 white pages. The first 2 set of pages, I'm going to read to you these 2 pages. with explanation. When I finish, I'm going to read to you two other papers. Why do I do the reading? Because the nature of the lecture is that we are talking verbally. So you can hear what I'm saying, but those who are here could have literature to take. Those who are not here do not have literature to take. So that's why we give the reference to ask you if you are interested in, you can make the follow-up. The first 2 pages I'm going to read to you. Those of you who are in the audience do not have this 2 sets of papers. Do not have it. 2 pages here. Now there are 2 other pages here that we will present secondarily. You have. The first 2 pages that I will read from, you will be able to get this information from the YouTube. It's from Professor Richard Wolff. And what I did was I went on the internet and I looked up Professor Richard Wolff, who is an economist, an elder economist. You know, he says he has roots in terms of his ancestry in Germany and France. But he's born and he's an American, and he's talking as a historian, specialty in economics. I believe that he has some family background in what you call the Jewish portion of Europe. So this information that I will read, I took it directly from the YouTube under the heading of Professor Richard Wolff. So I am not the originator of this material. And I'm not misrepresenting what he's speaking about, because I took it down word for word for word. So what I'm reading to you, you will be able to say, does Dr. Lewis, can I check what he's saying? I'm telling you now, I'm reading from what I got from the YouTube as it relates to what is written there, stated that this is the ideas and the writings of Professor Richard Wolff. Like many things we speak about, it's always been here before I was here or you were here. So we pick up a topic and then we decide to use it to educate each other. And that's the purpose of it. So I did not want to to become an editorial person. I don't like what he's saying. I just want you, the African community, to hear what Professor Wolff has to say. Okay? And then you can do your research here. Basically, it's another piece of the material that I have tried to piece together so that we Africans globally, but specifically in some instances in the United States, to review our status. Who's our African people? This is taken from the YouTube. The professor will give you information on how the economy, how the politics are conducted in the United States of America. So if you have some objection here, you pick up the phone to Professor Wolff. If you have some objection here, you call the State Department. You call Congress. Call whoever you want. You have a right to do that. If you say, well, you know, you selected. I selected this piece because I felt that it's part of the piece. We're talking about what is the status of African people in the United States. Why can't we progress? What role do we play? And in my opinion, the brother Ray Ray has given you, with the introduction of the different books and stuff, telling you that there are changes that are occurring in the United States daily.
Amen.
And these changes are changes that refer to humans. Brother Truss, 2 or 3 sessions ago, he was reading from one of our historians in reference to the Civil War. And as I listened and listened and listened, I caught what he was saying from what he was reading from, who was it, Frederick Douglass?
No, the boards.
It was Frederick Douglass, around the nature of United States independence when it relates to the Fourth. But the point is, the sentence that I caught specifically was the fact that it was statement that African people were brought here and African people were not only enslaved but made the country run. So you say, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
If you look at, or you go back on the independence of the United States, there were 2 major issues that the colonies had talked about, and they stated, we want to get away from the British Empire, because these colonies were put there by Britain. And what Britain said was, we have one set of those 13 colonies he called royal colonies. So anything that, any wealth, food, wood, when the colonists were put there, any wealth that came out of these 2 colonies called royal colonies would go to the king and his people. Of the colonies, there was another designation where the British gave his friends 2 other colonies. So you got 14 colonies, 2 or 3, and you check me, it's the royal. Everything that comes off there, wood, food, and everything goes back. And then there was 2 private colonies, but the remaining of the 3, 4, or 5 colonies, those colonies were designated for corporate. They call them corporate colonies. What does that mean? That those corporations that were in UK, we reserved, I'm talking like the king here, we're going to reserve 4 or 5 of these continents to corporations, businesses, so that they can get a piece of the action. We're going to enrich ourselves off these colonies. Whatever comes, the wood and the food, comes to the king and his boys. The other 2 is for his friends, and you can look them up. And the 3, 4, and 5 were corporation colonies. So when you look at the European invasion of Africa, 1884, 85, that whole area, the Europeans were coming in to do what? They were coming in to steal and take whatever was there that they needed, food mainly, and they used gunpowder. That's why you lost the wars. They had the gunpowder. And then they were stealing so much in Africa that they were, this is my part, this is my part, and they were killing each other, so they called the Berlin and Brussels Conference. So they could sit down and say, look, there's so much wealth here. Why are we killing each other? Let us cut it up. And that's what they did. And that was the importance of Europe, of that Berlin Conference. So the reason that I bring that up is because the United States of America is a carbon copy of feudalism. Feudalism in Europe was when the king owned everything, basically. And that king had his group of people who supported him. And he relied on those people to support them. You know, they had dukes and they had armies. It's the same thing with the United States. You have the United States of America run by a small group of people. They're all white males, Jews, Muslims, Christians. They'll make a difference. That's who's running the United States of America. And they make all of domestic and they will make all of foreign policy. And if you look at Robin Hood, and if you get up and you object, they come and get you, knock you off. So the dukes in the military was there to keep the masses of the population in check. It's the same thing in the United States. You have a handful of people running the domestic and foreign policy of the United States at the exclusion of 95% of all of the people in this country. They don't care about anybody but that small clique. And we are Africans, we're in the United States, and we're kept in a certain state. And that's the crux of what Professor Wolf is going to talk about. What state is the African people in the United States? You know what? Okay, so the three things that the colonies got together and said, we got to get Britain off of our backs. But these colonies were people, didn't have weapons, didn't have guns, basically. They came over, and the English, the British, who conquered that area, they Germanic people that conquered, they conquered the people, the Welsh, the Irish, and the Scottish. They went in and conquered it. And so when you say British, you're talking about German descendants. People who come out of the north into Germany, into what you call Great Britain. So when they came, who came? The business people, the military, and they came and established a colony, and they brought with them their slaves. So when you're talking about English, you're talking about a Germanic people that went in, conquered what you call Great Britain, enslaved the Irish, enslaved the Scots, enslaved everybody. So when they came, they brought their slaves, which were other whites.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard one of the white Americans who's former military was giving some information to his friend. I'm listening to the YouTube. And his friend said, he told his friend, the major population of slaves that were brought there by the British were Irish. So what are you talking about? You don't know the history that the Irish was enslaved by the British. That's what they brought. And then when they found out they got here, they don't know how to farm. You don't know the country. So the indigenous people who were on the East Coast of the United States, you heard, they fed them. What's the Thanksgiving? They came and said, the humanity of the indigenous people, you come here, we have so much land. Okay? What do they bring Thanksgiving? They bring them food. They bring them, let's take vegetables. Everything that you eat.
In abundance.
In abundance. Who sustained them was those indigenous people. And what did they get for sustaining them? Extermination.
Smallpox.
Okay? Not yet. So you see what they did to the indigenous people who said, come and share. They killed them down. Now who's going to feed us? We don't know how to farm. We don't know how to plant. So they said, okay, we know in Africa, there's a place in Africa where you have ancient civilizations. And when you go to Africa, you see probably the greatest abundance in selectivity in food. So we got to get those Africans who can work, skilled and unskilled. They're master farmers. They're master builders. So they went and they produced the European Atlantic slave trade. They don't want to say the European Atlantic, so they came and got us. By force. Killing and murdering and stealing, and then come back in the book, oh, you sold yourself. You sold your mother, your father, your uncle. Okay, that's the story. So they came, and we did. Africans did the work. They farmed. You go on the farm. I've never lived on the farm, but you go to on the farm. Somebody's got to plant the food. Somebody's got to find food to eat while the food is being grown. Because when you look at Europe, the reason the Europeans came out of Europe from 1800 to 1900 was 3 reasons. Because of famine, the weather, because of diseases, all of the infectious diseases you got now, and perpetual war. The British against France, the France against Germany. They were fighting every single day, killing each other. That's what the 20 million people from Europe, which we mentioned, that migrated from Europe in 1860 to 1920. They were running from that. They were running, well, mainly the people from the northwest part of Europe, that so-called English, the German, they were running, getting out of Europe, coming to the Americas, because they came to the United States through the British. But you had millions of Portuguese, Italians, pouring out of Europe, but they didn't come to the United States. The Portuguese and Spanish came out, and they went in a little bit to the Caribbean, but they went into mainly South America, because didn't Portugal and didn't Spain, the major colonists of South America. So they got the hell out of Europe, and they went in. That's why Europe has about 15 countries, physically, and 4 of them are all white. Chile, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay, that lower third. The Pope, before this one who died, was a 3rd generation Italian. So if you and I were to go to the Chile, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, it's 90%, 80, 85, 90. It's a white country because they killed down the indigenous people and the Africans. That was the outlet. Massive movement of people. So that's what you have now. And in all cases, the Europeans, the English, all of them, Portuguese, Spain, English, they came in and killed down the indigenous population and was killing down the population and Africans just like they were doing in America. There was idea, there's no difference. They were all running from the perpetual war, from famine and disease. The governmental system that was used and practiced in Europe was feudalism. A king, his protection, his military protection, they owned everything. They brought it here. Every European country is identical. You have a small group, that's all the European countries that include the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. All of the white-dominated countries, they didn't exist 250 years ago. They all did the genocide. They all have the same. A small group of white men running the domestic and foreign policy of each country. And as brother here quoted you, who's, what's the elder's name? The guy who's the master of World Economic Forum? Soros. And what are those? The World Economic Forum is the grouping of those white males at different ages whose grandfather and great-grandfather killed off everybody. So every white country outside of Europe, many of them, you've got the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, are the primary ones. That was their system. So you're living under a feudal system of the United States because the people, the English, who came here with these 13 colonies, that's what was practiced. So instead of calling the kings who's running it, this is the United States government is a fascist government because somebody defined fascism as the of two factors coming together to rule. The two factors are the rich, the oligarch, and the government. Who's running this government? White Anglo-Saxon corporations. That's who's running it. In conjunction with the Congress. So fascists has to have the government element and the private. So the private corporations, they run this country. They determine domestic and foreign policy. And they control Congress.
And
So Senate is the same.
And
So you're in a feudal system. So if you look at it, you say, what is what government? This you say is the United States a democracy? The answer, if you're talking about that, the answer is no. It's a republic. By somebody's definition, republic is when what the people want, they tell their representative. And the representative passes it in law. So the representative, you now call senators and congress people, governors and mayors. Those are your representatives. You're not in a democracy. You're in a republic. And all your mayors, all your governors, all your congress up, they're all brought off by corporations. That's the definition somebody gave of fascism, is when who's running the who's making the domestic and foreign policy? The corporations. The best money could buy.
we dictate.
So with that background, I'm going to read 2 pages that you don't have, that I got off the YouTube, because this is what Professor Wolf sees. Now you could say he's whatever it is, see if it fits you. If what he's saying is true, as Dr. Ben said, you don't ever want to be in a society where you're at the bottom. We're at the bottom. We're at the bottom because remember from 1860 to 1920, as the white immigrants were pouring in, they began to kill off the indigenous people, mainly in the South. Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and they started giving the land to the whites. That's the immigration. So that period, while tens of millions of Europeans were flooding into the United States, being distributed into the big cities for labor, and a certain percentage released to the rural areas in the South to farm, but they didn't know how to farm. So Martin Luther King had to say it to the United States government. You brought your peasants here and you educate them. If you look it up, they have colleges and everything. How to farm? What to farm? You can't farm something if you've never seen it. You see the rice and all of the food that was here. So Martin Luther King said, you brought your peasants here. So they made this a white country. They flooded the white in, put them in their cities to start doing industrial work, then bring them on the land. So that's when the killing, that march and stuff from the East Coast of the United States and push them all the way to the Mississippi. From 1860 to 1920, you had the importation of 20 million. You had the extermination of hundreds of thousands and millions, and they filled them out. And what was the fate of the Africans at that time? What was happening to us at the time they were flooding these people in, killing off the indigenous people? And the best example I could give, I'm not a historian, but this is what it shows. After the Civil War, that was officially over, half of us us who was enslaved from all of the East Coast into Texas and all of the where we were enslaved, half of us got caught on the plantation, couldn't leave, and we were enslaved as sharecroppers. Slavery. What's that? The constant. What was it? The amendment that gave us freedom. I forgot that. How much?
13.
Okay, take the 13th and then the 4th. They said all servitude shall be ended, except if you are committed of a crime. So they made you a prisoner, so they put you back. So you know what the force. About a quarter of us was given land along the East Coast, the gullies and stuff. All that is taken back. And then a quarter of us got out to the west. You know, it's the famous thing with the Wall Street. All those communities that were built up was systematically destroyed. So the two factors that the colonists said we gotta get away from Britain. It's like New York City, we want to get away from the federal government. There's not enough people here, not enough guns to go into Washington, D.C. and say we in New York don't want you anymore. Then what's going to happen? Yes, we're going to be locked up or killed. Do it. You want to try it? Do it. You know what's going to happen. So that was the fate of the colonists. How are you going to go against Britain? There were three major military powers in Europe at that time. It was the British, it was the French, and Russia. They had gunpowder, they had rifles, they had cannons, they had ships and navies. The colonists had nothing. How were the colonists going to go up against Great Britain? And then with Great Britain sent in soldiers. So they made a deal with the French. Because who was France, who was the biggest fight that Britain had was against France and Germany. So they went to the French and said to the French, can you please help us get rid of the British? And then the French said, excuse me, the French said, okay, I'll do it, but they're still fighting. Remember, the English, the French, and the Russians are fighting. At the same time, they're fighting in Europe. They're fighting in Canada. France was there, then Britain came, they fight. They're fighting down south. They're fighting in the Louisiana Purchase. They're fighting in the Caribbean where the Africans knock them off, right? That's the Haitian Revolution. They're fighting in Mexico. France is trying to establish a colony in Mexico. That's where you get Mayo 5th of May. Cinco de Mayo. That's celebrated at the time the French army had come in, and the indigenous people under a black, an African, the second president of Spain, of what you call Mexico, was an African. Okay. That's when the Mexican army was able to stop the invasion of Mexico of the French. So while the colonies are attempting to get rid of that, they're sitting in the middle. France is powerful enough to fight with England, with Britain, and Canada. They're powerful enough to fight in Mexico. They're battling in Caribbean. They're all over. We're not talking about what they're doing some other place. So it was the British, the French, and the Russians who had the gunpowder and weapons, the same gunpowder and weapons they took Africa. And the two major things that the colonists want the British off their back is because the British was taxing them, mistreating them, just like we are taxed and mistreated. But they couldn't do a damn thing about it. And the second thing was the economy. The two things you have to worry about is the economy, because in the last two sheets, we're going to deal with what the African countries, or any countries need, when you take over your country, you need two things. You need security. You need weapons to protect yourself, and you have to start growing your own damn food. Protection and food. So everybody that you know of on the earth, don't they eat? At that time, where'd you get the food? You get it from farms. You didn't have nobody trucking it in. So why was the African brought to this thing? To farm. The Europeans can't farm. They already start killing off the indigenous people, so they cut off their food supply, so they got us. So who was growing the food if you were in New York, Massachusetts, Georgia? It was African people farming. Then the farm has to be taken care of. Then you have to eat before the farm grows. So who was finding the animals and everything? Africans was the sole economy of the 13 colonies. Economy means what you need to survive. So we planted everything. We fed everybody. What is that way? You can get, your grandfather can get off as a third generation. And all of these big white billionaires getting their ancestors, their fathers and grandfathers coming off the ship with a damn suitcase. Now they're multi-billionaires. Let's forget about who fed us. So the two major points that the colonists was fighting, get the British off our back. And they made a deal with the French and said, look, if we can get them, we push them out, and I'll work with you on the blacks in the Caribbean. So those were the two things. Who fed them? So they said, damn, you bring over the Africans, you don't have to pay them, you enslave them, you have to be able to put a system in to keep, nobody wants to be enslaved. So the economy was the second factor. What are we going to eat? The indigenous people is not feeding us anymore. So the Africans fed the colonies. And everybody knew that if you wanted to establish a colony any place outside of Europe, you damn Europeans don't know how to farm. You better get some people in there who know how to farm. That's why we were brought there. To farm and to produce the economy. Okay, so with that, I'm going to read you what Professor Wolf says about capitalism. You under capitalism. Capitalism is when a handful of people run the domestic and foreign policy, and they absorb whatever wealth that gets to the country, they pull it in for themselves. That's what you're in feudalism. They call it not feudalism, capitalism now. You're in a capitalist country. Capitalist country was brought from Europe. When you have a handful of people running domestic and foreign policy, a handful of people who control and take most of the wealth. How are you going to tell me 3% of the American population has 50% of the wealth? That's what this country is about. So let's see what Wolf talks about specifically about African position in the United States at this point. And then you decide the future. Okay, so I'm going to read it. It's probably going to take me about 10 or 15 minutes. Not that long. But I want you to hear what Professor Wolf says about the position of African people, black people. He uses the term black. He doesn't use the term African. I didn't have time to photocopy it because of my schedule, but you can go online if you're interested. Professor Wolf, Richard Wolf, how capitalism mistreats black people. Capitalism is feudalism. It's the same thing that we mentioned before, and I said over and over, that the white comedian, I forgot his name, and the other brother, we were in the studio, Hunter College, in the auditorium in the evening was full of people. 99% of the people in that auditorium, WBAI, was people of color. And the white comedian, whose name we'll get, Cornel West, was sitting on this thing, and I don't remember the white comedian to come to. So he says, Michael Moore. Michael Moore said to, he was there, it's on internet, he was there on the stage here, and Cornel West was here, looking out. He said, let me tell you how white people are. See, Wolf says, capitalism and black people. So he's telling you there's a special relationship between black people and capitalists. So you're talking about black people and a handful of white people who run the damn place. That's what he's talking about. So Michael Moore says to Cornel West, let me show you how we white people think about you. And I'm going to repeat it because that's what Wolf said. Wolf said, how capitalism treats human beings. How capitalism treats white folks. No, he's telling you how capitalism treats black people. So you get an idea of how the system runs and where black people, African people fit in. Michael Moore said to the audience, I only want white people to answer the question. Why is it we white people find it necessary to mistreat black people in the United States? No answer. Second time, why is it necessary for us white people to mistreat black people in America? No answer. Third time, why do we white people find it necessary to mistreat black people? No answer. Are they going to sit there and admit that in the structure of the United States, even though African people built the damn country, is now in an inferior position under systemic suppression? Is that what the people? I got it, thank you. Save it for later. So that's what he's talking about.
You want to take home?
Yeah, but not take it home, whatever you got. That's what he's talking about. He's telling you, from his opinion as a white man, from his opinion as a professor, in his opinion as a, he calls himself a Marxist. This is coming from him. So you say, oh, the hell with him. But when you hear it, I'm pretty sure we all have been caught up in it. So I'm going to read it. Hopefully I'm not going to editorialize it so we can get through it within 10 minutes. Professor Wolf argues that capitalism relies on keeping minority communities, particularly black people, economically economically lead down to survival. He said you're kept out. And then he puts headings. As a prominent Marxist, he don't like capitalism, but he's telling you. As a Marxist, economist Wolf outlines how racial discrimination is structurally, functionally to the capitalist system. It's essential. Rates that just a colonist of individual prejudice. In other words, they're structurally against you not as an individual, but as a group. How were we as a group treated under official slavery? You were everything. Man. Why is it that after the Civil War, they found it necessary to destroy our communities? Because you were leaving. Who was going to cook the food? Who was going to work for nothing? Who was going to be? So they didn't want the tool that drove their economy. Africans was the economy. You did all the invention. And you're going to let them now walk away and form their own community? So who the hell is going to do the skilled and unskilled work here? No. So that's why they began to destroy your city. They're bringing in the whites, they're killing down the indigenous, and they're destroying your community. They're not letting you go back to Africa. They want to squash you and use everything they can. And one of Abraham Lincoln, whatever the party he put in, one of the main reasons for the party that he created was, he said that white people, they never talk about how white people lived under slavery, that white people, you're a white owner. You get your home built for nothing, you get your food for nothing, and you're going to hire a white man to till the garden? You're going to hire a white man to build your home? These people who came here, they're looking for riches and to live well at the expense. So what happened in the South with white people, they were kept in poverty. Because a white farmer, somebody is not going to hire another white man to do the work when he can get it free. So the thing is, you were the economy. Okay. So he's saying they needed to use you as a collective, and they're not discriminating with you because they hate you as an individual. As a shock absorber, the suppression of minority groups serves a specific mechanism within the capitalist economy. Why do they need you? Why don't they just kill you off and get you out? Because you're still important to this economy. Look at all your entertainment. Without African people, you wouldn't have football. You wouldn't have anything. All of these sports, all of the music that white people are making billions of dollars, it's on you. You ain't got no white people dancing, no white people doing anything. The suppression of minority groups, the suppression of minority groups serves specific mechanism within the capitalist economy. They still need you. They could admit it. Absorbing the hit to protect the system core, capitalism requires a segment of the population to absorb the worst damage of the cycle. There's up and down cycles.
Because the cycle is up and down.
Yeah, but who's gonna suffer the most?
Us.
During the COVID, according to the government statistics, the unemployment rate in the United States, however they rated, you know what it was? For that 4 years? Give me a number. What percent was it? 50% officially, as the young lady says there, were unemployed, were put in non-employment. Half the damn workforce was put out. While you print up trillions of dollars and give it to the big corporations, and they're the only one that can stay open. Who can stay open? Only big corporations.
And the liquor stores.
The liquor store and the pharmacy. The rest of you go to hell. 1/3 of all small businesses were destroyed. So the people who run the economy made a decision. On this downturn, we damn sure aren't going to lose. Who's going to lose? A vast majority of African and a sizable chunk of whites.
Poor people.
Well, poor people is defined as the lower 90%. So you got 50% unemployment, whatever they said, even in the Great Depression in the 20s and 30s was only come to 50%, and you wipe out a third of your small businesses. That's capitalism. The big businesses were kept intact. And who suffered was the small businessmen and women, which was mainly whites, and masses amount of that. Millions of people lost their homes. That COVID started in 2018-19, and they only got back, about 4 or 5 years. About 21, 22? So you never, you came out and you go up. You came out and you go up. So the COVID went up, laid off massive, and then it ticket. It leveled off a little bit. And when we finish, you're going to see the country is down. Back into that. So this the up and down cycle. The United States is in, that's the cycle of capitalism. And part of the cycle has to do with the fact that these Europeans, when they came out, the way they conquered and killed down. Why is China and Russia called China and the United States? They make equal amount of revenue. What does China do with half to 3/4 of the wealth that comes into China? They build the schools. 10, 15 years ago, 15% of the Chinese went to college. Now it's 70%. Take that to the United States. Less and less people are going to college. Not only less and less, you're ripping the guts out. How do you go to college? When I came through and others came through, it was free. Almost no tuition. Now you got $30,000 or $40,000 debt to get out with a bachelor's degree that you can't do anything with. Because as another economist, Michael Hudson, another economist. One of his books, he said, is killing the host. The host, a parasite, is in you, but it doesn't kill you, right? It lives off you. If the parasites kill you, they ain't got no more. So when you have parasites, they're there to live to you, but don't kill you. So what he's saying, at the rate they're taking this country down, as every time the country dips down in depression, the rich get richer, and they keep pushing everything on everybody else. That's what he meant when he said killing the host. So we didn't come out of it. And when we end up, if we get a chance to end up with the Iran war, you haven't seen anything yet. African people, he labeled, absorb the hit to protect the system's core. They're protecting capitalism, they're protecting the big corporation. When the hits come, the hell with the rest of the people. So now, African people are being impoverished more, and now more and more whites in the feudalism, they never cared about the masses of people. And the people running the country don't care about the masses of white, but they have us to buffer it. And they could hold on to a certain amount of wealth as a result of the last 30 or 40 years the United States running around the world stealing from everybody. So we're here to absorbing the hit to protect the system's core. White people, and system core is the businessmen. Capitalism requires a segment of the population to absorb the worst damage of the cycle. That's you. And now more and more whites. Just like most of the whites and other non-white people, non-black people who come to the country, they know after a while they hear who's the one held down, who the one doesn't have anything, but they know they're placed above us to keep us down. Last hired, first fired. Black workers are disposable technically. Black workers are disproportionately related to the role. I copy this wrong. Beating the brunt of the local king. Okay, so basically what they're saying is we're taking the brunt of the massive unemployment, so our communities will become more impoverished, including loss of property. Protecting the majority by forcing black population to absorb these economic shocks. That's when the thing goes down, you get laid off, can't pay your rent, blah, blah, blah. So they lay off all the blacks first, and then after you knock your community down to nothing, then if it continues to bad, we start knocking down the white people. And that's what happened under the COVID. If you tell me 1/3 of all of the capitalists, the little, the small, they were mainly white, not us. So the whites had to take a massive hit this time to protect the core. That core is always going to manipulate the population to protect.
That's the host, right?
That's right. By forcing black population to absorb these economic shocks, the system keeps the white majority relatively insulated, secure, and less likely to revolt. This is only Wolf saying, you don't have to agree to it. But if you read this on TV, would you think they would want to read this on TV to everybody? Minimizing labor costs, wage suppression. Every capitalist system fundamentally seeks to maximize profit by driving down the cost of labor. By using historical oppression to designate black people as a lower tier of workforce, employers can legally and systematically pay them inferior wages. Halfway through. The reserve army of labor. Keeping a segment of the black community chronically unemployed or underemployed creates a surplus of destitute labor. The surplus is used to threaten active workers against demanding better pay or working conditions. The elite is against everybody. All the blacks, all of everybody to themselves. But there's an order of who's going to get the most damage, and it's you. Prevent to come together. Solidarity. If they enter working class united, they would have a power to overthrow the capitalist system. That's if all people get together, but they keep you divided. Weaponizing racism. Capitalism utilizes white supremacy to cultivate racial resentment. Scapegoating. White workers class is conditioned to blame black people, immigrants, and minority to divert tension from organized groups. So they're telling you the elite is running the show. Co-opting black capitalism. The ruling elite intentionally promotes concepts like black buying and black capitalism. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that the overall pattern, they're going to suppress you. Diffusing rebellion effectively drives collective black energy away from radical political organization. Role of the police / prison. Violent mechanism to control the surplus population and protect private property.
Of whites.
So that's Professor Wolf. Okay, let's read these last 2 pages so we can have question and answer. You now have this sheet. In the heading of the first sheet is the Middle East, Southeast Asia. We're going to discuss the Iran, United States, Israel war, because it has a profound effect on the economy. The area that we're talking about, for those who are here, we designated the area. The Middle East is just a name. The Middle East doesn't mean the middle of what. But the Middle East, that term, whoever brought it up, designates a certain part of the world. So let's tell you what part of the world somebody designated the Middle East. Here's Africa. See this big Africa. So the Middle East is not Africa. There's North America. Canada, US, Mexico, Central, South America. So the Middle East is not this hemisphere. The Middle East is not Africa. And this is Europe. The Middle East is not Europe. And this is Asia. All of the red, all of this, China coming down, all around me. This is Asia, India, and here. So they're not talking about any of these big areas. They're talking about a specific area, which when you look at the map, what countries are in the so-called Middle East? Turkey? That's why they don't teach geography anymore any place. Iran? Iraq? Syria? What is now Saudi Arabia? Yemen? And Iran.
Where's her moose? Where's her moose?
Okay.
Where is that at? Her moose?
The Strait of Hormuz, okay, is here. It's bordered by Iran and United Arab Emirates. These are the two countries. The Strait of Hormuz is that waterway that has two waters, two countries bordering the waterway when it gets to here. That's Iran, and you see this strip? That's United Arab Emirates.
And what's on this far side? Is that
And this is the Red Sea.
No, go up. Repeat, go up. No, go toward me. Come toward me.
Just go up and point to it, Miss D.
Yeah, they say what?
This way and you can see it.
What is right here?
Saudi Arabia. Okay, so the countries that are in the Middle East, what does the Middle East have that everybody wants?
Oil. Food.
Oil, primarily. That's one of the richest oil areas in the world. Primarily what's coming out of there is oil. Now that oil becomes gas, and there's fertilizer, and there are other materials that we need from there. The purpose of this is the Middle East. Okay? This part of the Middle East, which you call Turkey, what you call Iran, Iraq, what you call Saudi Arabia, and all of this area, you see all this area? It was under the colonial rule of the Turks. They call it the Ottoman Empire. Because they were, the English, the Russian, and the Turks were always fighting each other about this area for a long time. But from 1917, the end of World War I, before the end of World War I, this country called Turkey was called the Ottoman Empire. And Turkey had conquered part of Egypt, part of Libya, and they conquered this whole big area. Okay? Turkey, the Ottoman Empire. After World War I, Turkey was the loser in the war. And when you lose your property. So when the Turks lost World War I, in 1917, all of this area that you now call the Middle East were taken over by England, France, and Russia, divided this area up. You see this area that we designated here? All of this area, what you call the Middle East, was under the colonial thumb of Turkey. Okay? So now you know where the Middle East is. It's a mass of Asia. It's kind of fused into Asia. The Turks controlled it for hundreds of years. Controlled this area. When Turkey lost the war in World War I, the English, the French, and Russians said, we're going to cut up this area. All that area that Turkey used to control, we're going to take control of it. Why? Vast amount of oil and gas. After 1917, the British, England, France, and Russia said, we're going to cut this up among us. But this area, and we'll name the countries, this area, the Middle East, Britain was still the strongest military. This is in 1900, the United States was coming. But Britain was still the strongest military. They were losing power because they wasted it all in World War I and World War II. So this area, the British controlled this whole area up until 1989. And then who stepped in to control the area? The United States of America. Because they were the next strongest power at the end of World War I. So when you talk about the Middle East, you're talking about this area that is between Africa and that part of Asia. And it has tremendous amount of oil. Okay? Now, when we start referring to this page, every country that is listed on this page was here. And at the end of this page, I have a schematic. If you look at this page, the lower left corner, you're going to see how these countries came into existence. All of these countries, Bahrain, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Palestine, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates did not exist. They were just part of this area under the Turkish control. Then they fell under the British control. And then the United States stepped in as the dominant one. Okay? So when we go through this sheet, you'll understand. A shape is just a print. A shape is just the head of a group of people. Okay? When we read this here. So this is the Middle East. Presently, the United States and Israel attack Iran. This is Iran. The United States and Israel, Israel the size of New Jersey. Nothing. Israel and the United States, here's Israel, right here, and the United States attack Iran. So Iran is now at war with the United States and Israel. Iran has allies that are fighting with Iran to get rid of Israel and to get rid of the United States. Because Israel and the United States don't belong there. Israel was put there in 1944, they officially said. 44, 45, 47, they just got there. The United States have military bases in primarily these cities, this area. Most of the countries, these Arab countries, are right here. So, World War II, Turkey lost the war as the Ottoman Empire. England, France, and Russia decided to cut up this area. Russia got a little piece, and this whole Middle East area is talking about this whole peninsula up to here, excluding Turkey and Iran. Okay? Now, the British was there from the end of World War I, 17. And they were there doing something. And we'll say what they were doing. And they pulled out in 1989. Too weak to stay. The United States steps in to replace them. As they are moving out, the United States is coming in. So when you hear about this war, the United States has built military bases all through these areas into Iraq. Okay, so we give the background. It's oil there. Most of these countries that is listed is in this area. Okay? That's where the oil is. But when you pump the oil, you have to get it out. And in order to get the oil out, it's got to come through this Persian Gulf. Hook here and out. Straits of Hormuz, right here. 25% of the oil that all the countries in the world uses. Let me back that up. Most of the countries in the world get oil from multiple sources. But 25% of the global use of the oil comes through this strait. And where does this go? It goes to China, Japan, South Korea, and Thailand. This oil is critical for the Asia and for Europe. Now Africa has 1/10 of 10 to 15% of all the oil known. So Africa got it all. But the people, the countries that are dependent on that oil getting out is primarily China, but China has already built oil to it. But it's Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and these other countries. Most of what you buy in America comes out of the Asian countries. You look at almost anything that's manufactured comes out of China, comes out of Vietnam, India, and these are the people who can't get the oil, and their manufacturing economy is coming down. Okay? So why? Okay. So you got the gist, okay? England was stealing the oil from Iran. They're not part of the Middle East, but the British had gone in and they was taking Iranian oil. As the British got weaker and weaker, they asked the United States, come on in, I'll give you a piece of the action to help me hold on. That's when you hear about the Shah and everything else.
That
So
was
the,
in the 50s, right?
huh?
Wasn't that in the 50s? The Shah River?
Well, yeah, you're right. The exact date is not important.
Okay.
What's important is that the British had been stealing oil from Iran since the end of World War I. So they've been stealing the oil from the 1915, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So The way the United States gets involved with Iran, the British said, look, come and help me hold on, because people don't want to be held down. And I'll give you a piece of the action. That's how the United States got involved. Then they say, oh, you see that little country called Israel? Whose population now is 1/3 of white people from Europe calling themselves Jews. My position, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, they're 3 religions coming out of Africa, documented by Dr. Ben and anybody else to see.
All come out of Africa. Say it again.
All come out of Africa. Those are Dr. Ben's book, Africa, Mother of Western Religions. The Western religions is Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Judaism first, they all come from Africans. Then the Africans in that area began to do a variation of Judaism, and then that's when you get Christianity. Yep. And then when it'll spread, and people are picking up in this area, over here, and then Muslims use the Old Testament, the New Testament, and what's Quran. Quran is just the Muslim, the Arabic part to add on to it. But the foundation and everything is just like what you call when they went in the desert and they were worshiping a cow idol. The cow idol was goddess Aset, came in the form of a cow.
They put it in the 10 Commandments.
Okay, so that's not, the point is that we're not talking about religion here. So the British was stealing Iranian oil. And the Iranians said, the British said to America, come on in, let it help me with it. And then later, Britain, the United States said, we could pull in Israel, because Israel right now, 1/3 of Israel's population, they say, is made up of Europeans that made up of people who call themselves Jews, come out of Europe. That's Netanyahu and Trump. People come from Germany, and Netanyahu come from, they're the same people.
Because
1/3 of the people who call themselves practicing Jews come from that Palestine area. There's always been human beings, because it all come out of Africa. There have always been human beings who became part of the African religion called Judaism. So you had people here living in this part, and living in what is now Israel for thousands and hundreds of years, African people whoever genetically was there. So when the white Jews, white people from Europe, created Israel, it's a whole other story. They already had human beings living there practicing Judaism. And then you have Dr. Ben. He's from a Jewish. He's Jewish. So the 3 major groups of people who say they're Jewish, 1/3 comes from President, we could go, 1/3 comes from Europeans who look like Netanyahu, who are white people, pure white. 1/3 comes from people who have been there for so long, whatever their colors or whatever it is. And the 3rd area where you have concentration of Jews is the Khazars. The Khazars are part of an Asian group of people here. So you have Islamic, so that's the breakdown. 1/3 of the population now are human beings who've been practicing Judaism for hundreds of years, or thousands. 1/3 comes from the people in Asia who's practicing the Jewish religion. And 1/3 comes from white Jews. And Dr. Ben is part of that part of the African who adhere to Judaism. Who runs the country are the white people. Okay? And later on, when we deal with the issue of religion and should religion run a country, because they have a problem with the Sahel nation. There's some imams from, what's the big African country? I can't think of it. Nigeria.
Nigeria.
There's an imam who's now challenging Traoré and saying that Traoré is a military man. He doesn't know how to run a country. But when you look at where he is in Nigeria, and he has been under the Sharia law, if we have time to question and answer, there's an assault on Africa. Okay? The people who's causing the African the most problem, not only the corrupt leadership, we're going to get rid of them, because the young people not going to tolerate it. So we don't have to worry about, in my opinion,
Yes, I agree.
they're going to die out.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
See, the Sahel nation, the Sahel runs across Mauritania, Senegal, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. So the Sahel nations are Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. See these three? This is the Sahel. But you have Senegal and Mauritania as part of the Sahel. Sahel refers to that strip from east to west that's crossing Africa at this location. That's when they say the Sahel. The three nations that have confederated is Niger. Niger is bigger than Nigeria. Burkina Faso and Mali. These three. And guess what? In this area, that's where most of the gold is. They got as much oil as Nigeria. And that's where the rivers, you know, see, when they wanted to lock out the three nations, they want the Europeans and Americans tell some of the African leaders who don't know they're African. These three nations, they don't have ports. Let's lock them down. To strangle them. One, these three. Burkina Faso is small. Okay, so you see these three, right? Ray, can you give me the black? Let's pin it there. So we're going back and forth to Wheeler. You see this stuff you put in here? Let's put some more of that there. Of course, if you don't know the geography. Okay, so the Sahel nations run from west all the way to Eritrea.
So Dr. Lewis,
Okay, go on. It runs from Mauritania. Yes, I'm listening.
the Sahel is Central Africa?
Who?
The Sahel is Central Africa? No, the Sahel. The Central.
Okay, go on.
It's not north or south, but it's Central.
You see this strip?
That's Central.
You see this strip? Let's look across the strip. Look. United States fits into Africa 4 times. Okay. You see this strip from west to east? Every one of the nations there are considered Sahel. That means that Senegal, Mauritania, right? Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Only Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali are federated. Why are they federated? Just like the people, the white people who want to be get rid of the British, they want to get rid of the people who steal it from them, which is the French, the Europeans, and the Americans. And that's what they did. And then on the last page, you're going to see what we need to use to build Africa and what people are trying to stop us. So you see this? These 3 nations, here, here, and here. 2 more pieces. Wait. 2 more pieces. These are Sahel nations. What did the 14 colonies in the United States do? They confederated. They locked themselves into a partnership for their survival. The same thing the Sahel nations are doing. Instead of one country, they're three. We are one individually, but there is a mutual connection. We're going to protect each other when it comes to military and blah, blah, blah. And that's what's making them strong, is that in order to overthrow them, you have to make it much more difficult if you try to overthrow each.
Exactly.
Now, the point that I'm deviating is, this is Senegal, this is Mauritania, this is a lot of desert. Mali, Niger, and these three. Not Chad. This is Mali. Burkina Faso and Nigeria. This is the Confederated States. Okay? Now, Chad most likely will join. So these are the three states that have officially confederated. Chad is going to come in. When they stop the civil war in Sudan, Sudan is coming in.
Amen to that.
And then Eritrea. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You know where the water of these from Ghana and the water from Ghana. Here's Ghana. Here's Nigeria. You know where they get their water supply from? The Sahel nations. So you know what the Sahel nations did, the three countries? Because what they did was, most of the rain that falls on this falls on these three countries. But they're landlocked. So what is happening, all of that runoff, that's where Ivory Coast, Ghana, Togo, Burkina Faso, and Nigeria, their rivers come out of the rain of the Sahel nations. You understand? Mm-hmm. What the Sahel nations are doing is they're damming up the dams. You know, the rain would go and just rush down to these countries here. But
Doctor, because in Nigeria got obviously beaches and close to the Atlantic Ocean. Most of the water, like I'm from Nigeria, most houses they kind of bore holes.
Yeah, to get the groundwater.
Groundwater, and we're talking about close to 1,000 feet in the ground. They kind of put a pumping machine in the ground to pump the fresh water from the bottom of the earth to a tank and the supply. Well, I'm somewhere you're coming from. The water you're talking about from the Sahara has to go with farmers, where they used to grow crops in the north.
Right.
So that island, but for daily living, the water that most Nigerians use for domestic users come from underground. For farmers in the north, they depend on the water from the Sahara, like you're speaking about.
You see what he's saying? You get the water from the well to sustain you.
Yeah.
Ghana, about 3 or 4 months ago, they lost some electrical power because the Okosoko Dam and the water that supplies it got reduced. You know why? Because Burkina Faso and Mali, the rainwater that hits Nigeria and hits Ghana comes from Burkina Faso. So what you're right about the ground, but Burkina Faso saying that rainwater, instead of letting it run into Ghana, they're damming it to get more water so they can increase their agricultural production. So now these three countries are critical for water to these lower countries. And by Burkina Faso and Mali and Burkina Faso, they're beginning to dam up. Nigeria is damming up here, and Nigeria in the north that have a water shortage. Even though you dig for your water, you still depend upon that heavy rain, the monsoon, right? So Burkina Faso, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Mali said, we're going to dam this up so that we'll have more water to increase the ability to make food. Okay. So the point I'm saying is, these three are locked together. Senegal is coming. Faye, but not Faye, can't think of his name. The president, not Faye, I can't, it'll come to me. So, can you see these three? When Chad joined, Sudan joins in here. You're talking massive oil. That's one thing. So, what's causing the problem here? Jihadists, right? What's causing the problem in Chad? Jihadists. What's causing the civil war in Sudan? Jihadists. Where are the jihadists coming from? The physical bodies.
From the Middle East?
The Arab countries.
That's right.
Are supplying the manpower that raided Chad just recently. And remember, just about 2 or 3 months ago, 12,000 heavily armed people came and they tried to overthrow Mali.
That's a fact.
But can you answer that? Might be emergency. Hello? Okay, I'll call you right back. Okay. We're going to be finished soon, so let me shut this off. I thought I'd cut it down.
Don't worry about it, Grandpa.
That's the way it goes.
That's the way it goes.
Okay. So the jihadists is coming from two parts. When the United States destroyed Libya, they took the weapons, Libyan weapons, and they divided them into the jihadists here, and they sent other half up to Syria. Because the United States and Europe I use the term jihadists to fight. So the jihadists, just a month or two ago, they attacked Mali to overthrow. 12,000 men went in, they said. In Nigeria, Burkina Faso, and Mali, their combined armies defeated 12,000 heavily armed people. When you look at the so-called rebels, you see they all are human beings that you would call Africans or Arabs. So the manpower to attack the Sahel, they just attacked Chad 2 weeks ago. They also are attacking the northern third of Nigeria. Nigeria has one of the biggest, strongest armies in Africa. Then you ask yourself the question, why do they have French troops in? Why do they have American troops in? Because Nigeria right now is not with the Africans, they're with Europeans. The leadership is not doing right. Okay. So they fought off the jihadists. It is the jihadists that make up most of the problem in Sudan. The manpower is coming from these Muslim nations, Saudi Arabia and a few of the others.
Why is that so?
Gold.
The gold.
Resources.
For the Arab countries, the key thing is gold. Because in the north part of all of these countries, they'll take Niger, Mali and Niger mainly, and Burkina Faso. When they pushed the French out and the rebels out, and they took control of all of the minefield. So a lot of the gold You see, when the Europeans were here, they kept the attack. So that those leaders in Nigeria, Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali. I'll give you an example. The president of Niger that they took to court, his name was, it'll come to me. He was allowing the French to take uranium at 80 cents a pound. Let's use that.
Wow.
The world's uranium was 200. So everybody else was paying $200 a pound.
80 cents.
And this guy was giving the French 80 cents. So when you lose that access, that's one of the reasons why Europe is in the decline, because they don't have the uranium for the electricity. The gold. Now that Burkina Faso and Mali have retaken large amounts of a lot of that gold that was taken out, dug up and taken out, now the government's control. I forgot one country, there's a country here, the gold went from taking it out from the Sahara, it goes out to the Arabs, and it goes to the Arabs, and it goes to the Swiss, and they process your gold.
I think the Russians are involved too.
No, not the Russians. The Russians are not involved in taking the gold out of the Sahara. It's all human beings. And the gold goes out, and it gets into the Arab nations, and is processed in Switzerland and other places. The Russians have nothing to do with that gold. So there's a jihadist movement. Where do these men come from? They come out of Libya, and they come out of the Arab countries. And when they fought them off, and they captured many rebels, they had U.S. money, French money, and European Union money. So it's the Europeans and the United States that's providing the weapons, the motorcycles, and the weapons, and the surveillance. And the Arab countries are supplying the manpower. And so what the Sahel nations have done, and Chad and the rest of them, by pushing back, they're depriving the United States, Europe, and the Arab countries this vast amount of gold. That's the main thing at this particular point. Niger may have as much gold as Nigeria. They all are the same countries, just the French came and they cut it and they called it Niger. The English came and they cut it and called it Nigeria. Okay, so we deviate a little bit, but we got that. So let's swing back. So let's, for time's sake, let us now read this area. You have the paper. Okay? The Middle East, which is Southwest Asia. So if you want to know location by geography, it's Southwest Asia. This is Asia. And all of the action is on the southwest of it. Not in the center, not in the west, not in the east, not in the south. Right here. That section is the Middle East. This is the section that the war is taking place. And all of the countries that I've listed, they all are here. Now, let's read Middle East, Southwest Asia. Gross domestic product, $2.7 trillion per year. So you're telling me that countries in this area are producing $2 trillion a year. Wouldn't the United States want a piece of that?
Oh, yes.
Wouldn't Israel want a piece of that?
Sure.
Okay, that's the gross domestic product somebody put together of the Middle East, which is a chunk of southern, southwest Asia. This is definitely Asia. This is all Asia. Middle East is the south. All this is Asia. The Middle East is the south, west part of Asia. Arabs, Berbers, Kurds, and Nubians. We African people are all over the place. And Somalians. The major thing is oil. Iran, 90 million people. The square mile is 650,000 square miles. 600. That's about 1/3. United States is 3,000. It's about 1/5 of the size of the United States. Massive country. Probably go from Massachusetts down into North Carolina and over. It's a big country. Turkey, 885 million. Area, population, 450 million people live in this area. So you got a vast amount of people, a large land mass, large part of it is desert, but you have fabulous deposits of oil. The United States doesn't live here. But that's right, they want the oil, and they have military bases. And we'll find out what happened to the military bases. So what countries are here? Most of these countries that I list are right here. Because remember, this is what the Turks had control of this area and the Ottoman Empire. When they lost World War I, the British took over this area. The British came in 1917. The British left in 1989. And when they left in 1989, the United States was phasing in. One white country, now second white country, to steal the oil. In that process, Britain was stealing the oil from Iran. And then when Mossadegh came, and they wanted an indigenous person, that's when they made the coup. The United States, Great Britain, and Israel made a coup and kicked out the Iranian president and put in, what's the name? What is it? Shah of Iran.
Shah.
Okay? And they were stealing the oil in 1980, 1900. And then the people got together and they made the revolution and kicked out the Shah 1979. Right? So from 1979 to now, the United States has a foreign policy that's hostile to Iran. And what they really want to do is knock off Iran and steal oil again. But the problem with United States war, according to the news people, is that the United States has run out of missiles.
They ain't got no ammunition. They ain't got nothing.
No ammunition. They run out.
Wow.
Remember Professor Allen that was here? And he was in the Vietnamese War? And what did he tell you? What don't you want to run out? Bullets. Iran has been preparing for this war for the last 30
It's in the Daily Mall that they running out of, they don't have the military equipment.
They run out. The logistics.
Let me find it.
They run out all of the military. And now Iran is bombing out all of the bases. Okay. Now you see these countries that we want to name. All of these countries are right in this area. They're all here and here. That's it. Every one of these countries in the Middle East are right here. Iran is here.
Tight space.
Well, at the end, you will see how they got there and who they are and what they are. What countries are here? This little area.
Are those close to Hormuz?
The Strait of Hormuz is here. The Strait, Bahrain? Yes.
This is from Reuters. So this is not Dr. Lewis. That's from Reuters.
Everybody knows it. The world knows it now. United States, we're going to fight in 3 fronts. In Ukraine to knock off Russia. We're going to fight in what you call it, Iran, and we're going to beat China.
That's from Reuters.
Run out of missiles. Old stuff. No, you took all the people, the same way the white people who run this country took the vast wealth. Instead of building up the country, they put it in their pockets. Yeah. They made get it back again. They made yachts and everything else, countries falling apart. China spends a large percentage of their money on the development of the country.
Wow.
U.S. has used virtually all of its long-range precision missiles during Iran war. Remember we call logistics?
Wow.
If Brother Ray's wife and his unit, they couldn't get the lights on.
This
logistics.
is not Dr. Lewis.
It's now
This is
known,
Reuters.
it's now known, the world now knows that the United States has run out of, you see, the reason that Iran is winning is because their ammunition is thousands of missiles. They're shooting missiles. Russia, the only thing the United States got is bombing. You understand? Missiles, the United States is bombing. When you bombing and you're losing planes and everything, those missiles, Iran is winning the war on the cheap.
That's right.
Okay, so what countries are right in this area? Bahrain, let's read it. Bahrain got its independence from the UK in 1971. There's 1.5 million people. Iraq got their independence from the UK 1932, and there are 5 million people. That should be 50. Iraq. Israel got their independence in 1944 from the UK. Jordan got their independence in 1944, 1927 from the UK. That's Britain. Kuwait got its independence from the UK 1961, 4 million. Lebanon got their independence from France in 1943. Palestine still hasn't had its independence. Oman got their independence from Portugal in 1650. Qatar got their independence from UK in 1971. Saudi Arabia got their independence from UK in 1932, and United Arab Emirates. So who controlled that whole area? By looking at the countries that now exist, they all got their independence from Britain. Because Britain was the big guy then. The United States didn't have no part to doing a damn thing. But the British pulled out. Okay, let's go here. People, Arabs, Berbers, Kurds, Nubians, Somalians. 1971, post-World War I, Britain, France, and Russia, Middle East territory, post-Ottoman Empire. Sykes-Picot, if you ever look at the, what you call that, Lawrence of Arabia, they do a good job of it. Sykes-Picot was a British official and a French official. And they were the ones, with the permission of Britain and France, who wrote the treaty. The Sykes-Picot, French and English treaty was the agreement between the British and the French to partition the Middle East. See, we're going to cut it all up. We're going to partition the Middle East. In the Middle East between Britain and France. So you can, by this chart, you see almost every one of these Arab countries, even Iraq, in a sense, Iran, they were all, the countries that make up the Middle East, they were all controlled by the British from 1911 to 1989. The United States came in, started building its military bases, and they pulled Israel in with it. Now, let's take this last schematic over here. Okay? Every one of these governments, except for Iran, Saudi Arabia, everyone we just read, how did they become a country? Well, if you look at Lawrence of Arabia, you notice I have a thing called emirate. An emirate. It's like a leader. So in that area, desert, you had a number emirate, a leader, and he may have 2,000 people under his control. Then on that part of the desert, you find another emirate or leader, he controls this part. Okay? So what happened was, these emirates, every one of these countries that you see listed here, existed as a nomadic group of people, tribes. And so they got together and said, let us gather our strength, and when the British leave, we're going to develop a country. So these countries that you call the Middle East was a formation of independent Arabs little around that pooled together. Okay? And from 1917 to 1968, they became a country. And now let's look down to finalize this page. Britain withdrew. You see where I am? You see here? Look up. See what I'm going here? Britain withdrew from the Arabian Peninsula in 1968. And what role did they play? They managed the domestic and foreign policies of each of the emirates. So all of these countries that grouped together to form a country, who was doing their business? The British. Who was protecting them? The British. They take the oil out, and the oil will go to Britain. That's what Britain was there. And Britain would pay the emirates, these tribes, a certain amount of money, paper money. What is that? The oil they were getting from the Middle East, or this area, from 1970 to 1980, Britain needed it to run its industry and to run its military. That same, you see that same setup? When the United States came in, the United States created the petrodollar. The petrodollar is the same thing. Same country, you sell oil, but you got to use the US dollar. By selling oil in US dollar, that strengthens the US dollar. Then they said to these countries, all of that billions and billions of dollars of profit that you make, for us protecting you, you have to reinvest it into the United States.
So the U.S. keep the money.
So the billions, not only do they get the US dollar strengthened, the hundreds of billions of dollars that these Arab countries made from selling the oil, they reinvested into the United States. That money went into the stock market, it went into the large corporations, and it went into the US Treasury notes. Nothing hits the masses of people. And that's part of the foundation of why you have so many billionaires and they're so rich. So can you imagine being part of that clique of, let's say, 50 major companies? Hundreds of billions of dollars are coming back to the country, and that money is going to the stock market. And who's in the stock market? Those handful of people. It's in the stock market, and it's in the large corporation. So when you be rich, if you were getting tens of millions of dollars every year from the average, that's how you got these big, massive American super corporations. They don't make nothing. But over the years, when the Arab countries were forced to reinvest, that it went to those three areas. So most of that massive wealth came to the stock market, which a handful got all the money. It came into the large corporations, and it came into U.S. Treasury. When it came to the U.S. Treasury, the Congress took a third of that money and gave it back to the corporation to make weapons that don't work. That's how all of your big U.S. corporations became rich. In that area, they didn't make a damn thing. You white people, you control the United States, who was powerful for 30 or 40 years, but you don't tell American people what happened to those hundreds of billions of dollars that the Arabs were pouring into the United States from 1974 to now, 74, 84, 94, 104, 140, 45 years of hundreds of billions of dollars hitting the United States, but it never comes to the damn people. That's why your subways are breaking down. That's why your schools are breaking down. That's why your roads are breaking down. That's why the architects of the United States that says that 90% of U.S. infrastructure is at level D, about to fall. But you got a big handful of multi-billionaires with yachts and everything else, and the country is falling apart. And every time there's a downturn, you lay off the black people. Now you start laying off the white people. That's what you in now. Okay, and then we're going to end. You got the second thing is just a list of what the Sahel nations and the other African nations have to do to build the country. What do you need when you make a coup and get rid of, in this case, the Sahel nation and others? You get rid of the United States, you get rid of the French, you get rid of the Europeans, the ones who are stealing everything. And from 1880 up into almost 1880, 1890s up to 200, the Europeans was putting infrastructure in Africa. What was the infrastructure? Roads and railroads to get all of the natural resources out, to get on the ships. All of the infrastructure that was put into Africa by the Europeans from 1860 to 1900 was roads and railroads to get everything out of Africa. They didn't put in any infrastructure. Okay, so as we finish, what is it that at Traore and the blueprint that you need to develop your country? Security. That's why they're building up the military. Food for independence, so you can feed yourself. You need agriculture, equipment, fertilizer, irrigation, harvest, planting, storage, transportation, treatment water. You didn't have time to have no government of Sharia or no Christian government. You got to build the country. The United States is built up. They had the benefit of 200 to 300 years of master African to build the country. Infrastructure, airports, canals, dams, electric power, bridge, factories, education, health care, emergency, pipelines, ports, railroads, roads, satellite system, telecommunication, waste, warehouse, water system. You need Sharia? You make a country run under Sharia? No, you need to build it. That's what Traore is saying to the imams coming out of Nigeria and every place else. Energy, hydroelectric, nuclear, oil, coal, wood, solar, wind. In employment, you need to build carpenters, electricians, engineers, factory workers, geologists, inventors, laborers, logistic managers, investors, researchers, teachers, technicians. That's what the Sahel nation is doing. That's what any nation do. This is what the United States did to bring in the Europeans and then work the Africans to build it up and then go around the rest of the world to bring the technology. That's where the wealth came from. And a large part of the wealth that the rich have came out of the input of hundreds of billions of dollars of investment by these Arabs. But it only went to a handful. That's the source. And when you got that much wealth and power, you don't give a damn. And Zimbabwe is an example. They complete ban on lithium concentrate export. You can't buy raw material. Lithium processing plant, 40 million, 400 million. Raw lithium into intermediate sulfate, first major First local step. So basically what they want to do is take the lithium and for local manufacturing of lithium ion batteries, memorandum of understanding with investors. So now Zimbabwe, like many countries, are saying, you're no longer going to get the raw material. Send it out, and then you manufacture and sell us back the finished product for 10 times as much. That's what's going on. The African countries are now in that stage of industrializing the country. And in order to do it, all of the people who come for raw material, you pass the law and stuff so that you keep the wealth here. Okay? And there are a number of countries that's getting into that. That's the future. When those countries mobilize the population to bring up this type of human technology. This is the human technology that the United States and Europe tapped when they pulled us out. They pulled out the natural resources, they took the carpenters, they took the bricklayers, they took it all. That's what happened. But the world changes. It's not going to stay that way. We went through a period. Now we're bringing ourselves back to that level.
Knowledge, wisdom, that's seeking information.
Any,
Classes like this.
right. Any questions or any comments that you want to make? If not, then we're finishing up.
We covered a lot of information. Thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you. No questions, sir.
Yeah, well, that's what whoever is able to speak and come, we come to bring information that may be relevant to African population.
Correct.
And so we've done our job in that respect. So this is how the word spreads.
Information.
Information.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. We'll wait till we're ready to see if anybody on the YouTube want to make any comments or anything. And you see, with the Sahel nations, they're doing this. So the same way, are you familiar with some of the imams from northern Nigeria who are criticizing Burkina Faso? Any questions?
Okay, does anybody have any questions about real quick?
Northern Nigeria seems very different from the South.
Okay, we got a question from the floor. Go ahead, my brother.
I said it's so funny how northern Nigeria feels so different from the South. Like the northern part of Nigeria is constricted by the Islamic State. That's where most of the violence is going on. It seems when the British got there, it felt like it was two different countries.
Right.
But when they left there, they kind of smashed them together and left it like that, which has been chaos for a long time. All those fighting didn't just start yesterday. This fighting has been going on for a long time. But most of the people in the northern part of Nigeria, they're not actually predominantly Nigerians. They come from Chad. They come from the Sahara Desert, like we spoke about.
They're
It's
all,
almost open border.
they're all one people. You lived all over, they cut the lines.
You're right. There was no line before. You're very right. You're very right.
Okay?
So-
In what's that, in the northern part of Nigeria, you know better than I, is so-called Islamic.
Yes.
But remember, the wealth from oil is in the south,
Correct.
and they didn't share. The northern part is relatively undeveloped.
And they control the agriculture, the food.
Yeah.
So one part has oil, the other part has the food. Yeah.
Right, so the people who run Nigeria, who are filthy rich, the people like the wealth here,
Yes.
they don't want to put the country under a footing where you build the country as a strong, powerful. Okay,
Yes.
the Sahel nations, the three nations,
Correct.
from what they're saying, they have a common military force of 5,000 that help, you know, that moves across the border.
Yeah, to control it.
This year, it's going to go to 15,000. This is a common military unit. You got the regular military protecting
Yes.
the population. Then you now have 5,000, and that's how they said they were. The full attack was on Mali, 12,000 men.
That is true.
But the Malis have a military. They have a large Russian component. And then you also have the military from Burkina Faso and Niger. They all participated. So you didn't jump on Niger, you weren't fighting Mali. You were fighting Mali, the Russians in Mali, and Burkina Faso and Niger. So that's what made them do. So they're saying that force, they want to make it to 15,000 by another 2 or 3 years. They have the academy,
Training, yeah.
and in about 3 or 4 years, 100,000.
Possible, just like the way the
100,000 troops they're going to have to move back and forth. So if they could block an attack of 12,000 well-armed men with 5,000 crack troops, what you think going to happen in 2 or 3 years when they got 100,000?
Sheesh. Wow. Just like the way the Americans and the Europeans have NATO, I think Africa should have something of such nature.
The Sahel nations are doing it. They're confederated,
Yes.
they're developing. And remember, the two things you gotta have is security and food.
And food.
Okay, any other questions from the Zoom audience? Zoom audience have a question for Doc? Anybody from Zoom? Going once? Going twice? Is there any questions from the Zoom audience for Dr. Lewis? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, give Dr. Lewis a great big hand. The video will be on YouTube. You can study it. You can study part 1, part 2, and part 3. But the blessing is that you could come down here and you could hang out with Doc or any of the speakers. So thank you, Zoom audience. Give Dr. Lewis a great big hand. We're going to wrap it up. And we also want to thank, we had a brother come today with some excellent food. So if you come out live, you're definitely going to get a nice plate of Jamaican, baby boy. So the war is still going on for information.
African pie.
Yeah, can I make a quick point?
Okay, Doc.
What I want to bring to the attention of our people, so that you know we're in a certain situation in the United States. It's because of the racism and capitalism. Whatever our population is, they say there's 1.4 billion people, whoever's counting, living on the continent of Africa. So that makes Africa the largest landmass by population, in a sense. So we're 1.4 billion. If you count all of the Africans that live outside of Africa, there's over 200 million of us living in India, the Adivasi. So there's at least 200 million human beings who are Africans who live in what is now India, who they originally populated. That put us at 1,600,000. And then if you count the Africans in Europe, in the Americas, and there you got at least another 150 million. So right now, you have close to 1,700,000,000. So there are more of us. So we're here, we're not going anywhere.
And
even though we are suppressed here, this is not all of Africa. Africa is moving. The other thing I want to mention is presently, what does Africa supply to Europe and China? Oil, gas, wood, and coal. The other four is food, fertilizer, minerals, and uranium. And you say food, 65% of the arable land globally is in Africa. The problem with the full distribution of the food is so many countries are living off the food in Africa. But now, with the Sahara and other countries going back to agriculture, when we could better control it, we're in good shape. Okay? The Chinese are the dominant economic power now. 10, 15 years, it will shift to Africa. In the next 20 years, the two major areas that's going to do most of the trading in the world is going to be between Africa and the Asians.
That's right. That's right.
The United States only produces 2 to 3% of the global economy. So don't despair about the situation that we're suffering in the United States. The most important region of the world for all Chinese is Big China. The most important area of the world for African people is the continent, no matter how much we spread.
Yeah.
So things are good.
Things are good, Doc. I like that. Things are moving in the right direction.
We're moving in the right direction.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, give Dr. Lewis a great big hand. Zoom audience, you could have conversation with him while we clean up. Let me see. Okay, we got something here. Do you think there is potential to organize against this? Do you think there's potential to organize against this? Against what? Against what?
They don't tell you.
It's probably not on. Let me see.
Right. So what he was saying, he was speaking about the labor situation and the bourgeoisie, right? Like the wealthy white capitalists basically draining all the money out of the economy and buying yachts and making the economic conditions worse for the workers. I was asking around that time.
So you want to see whether that's going to change?
I want to know your perspective on whether anything can be done domestically in terms of organizing to change that. I mean, I know you just said that Africa in the next 20, 25 years will become, I guess, like a global power in terms of production. But I think if I understand what you were saying correctly, the U.S. is in decline, and that will have negative consequences on the black people here. So I want to see your perspective on if or how you think the people here can do anything to address some of that harm.
The reason for the presentation is not that I necessarily have the answer to it. I just wanted to remind us where we are and what is being done to us as a people. I can't predict the future, but if the future is it's a reflection of how this country was put together, the extermination of the indigenous people, the enslavement of the African people, and those African people who presently live in the United States, we are responsible for the country being what it is. It's unfortunate that all of these people are wealthy. I own an oil company. Did you bring any oil over from Europe? I own a construction company. Did you bring any bricks from there? So the wealth that the people who run the country, the Europeans, all the wealth that they have here, they got when they got here. From what is here, in the wealth that's here in the United States, and the wealth that they have been able to take from people around the world. That's the source of the wealth. You ask them, are they going to give it up voluntarily? You have to build. China is the largest industrial power now. After 1949, after the Chinese Civil War, Russia from 1949 to almost in the 40s, 50s, 60s, almost to the 70s, China, Russia, the Soviet Union helped industrialize China. They brought it to this stage. Then the Chinese were smart enough to work with the Europeans, for the Europeans to make money and to have markets. They had to transfer the technology. So China in 1949 was a undeveloped rural area. And look at where they are now. A lot has to do with how the world changed, but the wealth that China is a country. It is a socialist country, and it has capitalism. But the capitalism in Russia, the capitalism in the United States, corporations, they run the full, anything that's done domestically and anything that's done foreign, the corporations determine what happens, this war. So whatever is left is left. In China, the wealth that comes from China, China knows they can't become wealthy invading and stealing. So what they've decided to do is they decided to say, we're going to work hard and compete. So the wealth that they built up, they put it in railroads. They put it in schools. They put it in dams. They put it in hydroelectric. They put it in nuclear. So China has used the wealth to primarily bring up the masses of China. Now, I don't know whether or not, because this is America and the white Anglo-Saxon running, and they don't give a damn about the other Europeans, which they didn't when they were in Europe. And they damn sure don't give a damn about African people here, because the history shows it, and there are no more indigenous people to give a damn. I judge the running of the country by the history. That's the history. You don't have that history in China. You don't have that history that China, when it was building up, and the Russian Soviet Union brought it up to a certain point, and then when the West started sending, and the Europeans started sending all of the technology there, when they got the technology, so let's get this straight. China is socialist and capitalist. The socialist part of the Chinese economy is run by the Chinese Communist Party. Yes. And the Chinese Communist Party spends most of the wealth on the development of the country. They have a capitalist country called capitalism. They let it exist. They regulate that capitalism. That capitalistic country in China, they don't run any domestic policy. They don't run any foreign policy. In here, the capitalists run the domestic and foreign. That's why you got it. So the Chinese government, let's say they don't have corruption, run the domestic and foreign policy. And they know that if they want to be strong, they have to build up China, because they can't run around. The United States has a history of being a powerful country only after you kill off millions of indigenous people, you enslave other Africans, so your prosperity is built off extermination, stolen land, stolen people. Up to this day. And then, because the United States came out as a dominant country after World War II, that fabulous wealth they had, it went into that small ruling class. And today, like I mentioned, the hundreds of billion dollars that the Arab country has been invested in the U.S. economy from 1944 to this day. It all goes to the stock market, it all goes to the large corporation, and it goes to the U.S. That's in the hands of a handful of Anglo-Saxon people who make themselves super billionaires. That's the history, not what I'm saying. When China makes hundreds of billions of dollars, they say in advance, we can't put it all in cars, we got to move our people. So they sort of value of being able to develop a national railroad network, right? So they can move people around quickly and they can move cargo around quickly. United States destroyed the rail system. So most of what is carried around the United States is trucks. China said, no, we ain't gonna work that way. It's more efficient that we have a development. China put their money into, United States Corporation in the United States want to do AI. There's not enough electricity here in the United States to do AI. So what they did was they went over to the Arab countries because the Arab countries have plenty of energy. So a lot of these big AI countries from the United States, they have their subsidiary in the Arab countries. Well, the Arab countries that fought with the United States are being bombed out. Okay? So when you trace the hundreds of billions of dollars that's been reinvested by the Arabs into the United States, you can trace it all to a handful of 5 or 6 or 7, 8% of white corporations and white rich families. The rest of it you don't see. Large percentage of China goes to build what the country needs. Okay. The capitalist economy, the capitalist segment of China is small. 10%, 15%. They're totally regulated by the Communist Party, and they don't make domestic or foreign policy. And guess what? All of the major corporations in the United States, in China, are what? Who owns it? Chinese government. They own it. All your steel and all the gold, all of the what you call this? Banks. All of the steel mills, all of the banks, everything that's important is government control. Everything here is under private control, and they do everything. That's why they run out of ammunition, because you charge $2 million to make a missile that don't work.
That don't work.
And now Iran is making missiles that work for $30,000, $40,000, and $50,000. So if you complain, the best way I could say it that anybody can check, the Communist Party of China runs the domestic and foreign policy. There are no private corporation that determine what's going to be built in the country, and there's no foreign service company going to determine whether they go to war. Here, every damn war. They're all private corporations, the money making, and who suffers? That's the difference. You have a capitalist government, fascist, because a large corporation and the government of the United States, they determine domestic and foreign policy. In China, the capitalist portion is 5 or 10%. They don't control any of the major banks. They don't control a damn thing on what's going to be built in China or they go to war. That's the difference. That's basically the difference. Not because I said it, the economy. Look at what happened. So I asked the people, who you think, Professor Wolf gave you a nice answer. Call Professor Wolf and ask him, why are you talking about how this system suppresses black people?
Where can you get Professor Wolf at?
You get him on the internet, you can call. That's the problem. So,
Okay.
one last thing. China doesn't have to, so that because there's not enough electricity to run AI here, China has plenty of electricity. You know what they've been building for the last 20 years? Hydroelectric dams. They've been increasing their nuclear reactors. They use solar panel, wind power, wind panel, solar panel. So they don't have to steal electricity. If their cities are big and beautiful, packed with millions of people, they don't have to go to any of their cities to steal electricity from the citizens. The citizens have abundant electricity, and now the AI will have abundant electricity because they've been building nuclear reactors. This country hasn't been building. They've been building dams. This country hasn't been building the dam.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, give Doc a great big hand. We'll be back in the future with part 4. Zoom audience, thank you very much. And give yourself a great big hand while we break the meeting down. The lecture will be on tomorrow, and you could check it out. Go through it, and if you have any questions, you can always come down and speak to Dr. Lewis personally.
Anybody?
Again, Black August, look at your history. No matter who's in power, we have to stop being used. We have to stop being used. Our replacements are here.
You know, and that's
And a word for all black elected officials, your days are numbered. Soros and the gang will replace you. You are done. And you're going to wish you never sold us out. Big ups to Rand Paul and the Republicans for having the hearings for the massive funeral that we've been going to, and they don't want to look at it. And the massive problems, and you don't want to look at it with our children. Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Thank the members for logging in, and it's a wrap.
Thank you, man.
if you know who you living with.